Hello, and welcome to Learning Theories and Applications. Today we'll be presenting some learning theories and concepts that our school will be focusing on this school year. These theories and concepts should assist you in developing a plan to engage your students in effective lessons as well as assist you with behavior needs you may encounter in the classroom. Please feel free to pause the presentation at any time to take notes. Here are our learning objectives for our course today. So we're going to get right into it. Classical conditioning. Classical conditioning is a form of learning in which a new voluntary response is acquired as a result of two stimuli being presented close together in time. So learning can take place when two or more stimuli are presented, and it can be used to overcome fears, increasing or decreasing immune function, and decreasing attraction. So the stimulus, it's a change in the environment that elicits. So it brings about a response. We have a neutral stimulus as an automatic involuntary reaction to the condition. And it can be used to overcome fears, increasing or decreasing immune function. Unconditioned stimulus is automatically triggers a response. Unconditioned response is an automatic involuntary reaction to an unconditional stimulus. And we'll talk about more in a second. So think about this. Here's an example. The last class before lunchtime can be difficult for students and their growing bodies. They may see that lunchtime isn't far off and their tummies rumble. So perhaps the students have music class before lunch every day. Halfway through the class, their stomachs may begin to grumble, similar to the salvation of the dogs and Pavlov's experiment. So the children may start to associate music class with hunger. So here the natural stimulus is after music class. The unconditional stimulus is eating lunch. So unconditional response is feeling hungry. The conditioned stimulus is the music class. So the conditioned response is feeling hungry. So how can we correct that problem? Well, the students may be allowed to have a snack before music class. This can curb any behavior that may arise in that class. Next, we have a fixed reinforcement schedule. Now, reinforcement is the process of how we increase the number of occurrence or frequency of a behavior that we want students to present the desired behavior. So we're going to discuss the fixed ratio schedule in which a reinforcer is presented after a certain constant number of responses. And we're going to have the fixed interval schedule. It's the actual scheduling of the reinforcement or occurrence of an activity. So how the fixed ratio schedule works. The fixed ratio schedule of reinforcement can be understood by just looking at the term itself. It means fixed, so that means something is constant, it's consistent. And ratio refers to the number of responses. So here's an example. A child is offered a reward after they earn 5 A's on their homework assignment. So after the 5th A on a homework assignment, the child will get to pick a toy. This is also a high rate of response, is one of the advantages of fixed ratio schedule. But we also have disadvantages, is that the subject may quickly become exhausted from such a high response rate. So how fixed interval reinforcement works? Well, a fixed interval reinforcement schedule is used. It is determined ahead of the practice time. It can be any interval of time from 1 minute to 1 week to 3 weeks to a year, but it's a fixed and unchanging. So this can have some benefits as well as some drawbacks. So a benefit to this would be the trainer knows exactly when to reinforce the behavior. Another benefit is it provides some stability for the participant if they know the schedule ahead of time. We also have drawbacks. So it's linked to the participant's knowledge. If they know they will only get a reward every 5 minutes, they may see no need to participate when the reward is not available. Another drawback is it is from the interval itself. If the interval is too long, the participant may get discouraged, and if the interval is too short, then the participant may not be doing the behavior for appropriate reasons. So an example of a fixed interval schedule. So a teacher gives reinforcement, say every 5 minutes in a class when a student appropriately raises their hand to answer a question. Or a teacher takes a weekly spelling test on Fridays. Those are fixed interval schedules. Let's talk about retrieval-based learning. This is a strategy of recalling facts, concepts, or events from memory or to enhance learning. The act of retrieving something from your memory actually strengthens the connections holding it in, making it more likely that you'll be able to recall it. So there are 3 ways to use retrieval-based learning during the class. So let's look at the low-stake quizzes. This is an example. So frequent low-stake quizzes are an easy way to incorporate retrieval practice. So the quizzes can be free response, they can be multiple choice. Student feedback can be the automatic, in this case, online quizzes for the instructor or from peers. So they get that automatic feedback. Questions should be neither too hard nor too easy. The goal is to achieve the desired difficulty. Number two things activity. So we can ask students to recall and write down 2 things they learned in class that day. Then we can get feedback. It can come from your peers or in groups. Brain dumps. You can ask students to write down everything they know about a certain topic. So the exact prompt used can be narrow or with the definition of culture from our textbook. So, and it could be broad. So why does social mobility vary across social groups depending on your learning goals? Optionally, students can then compare and contrast their answers with their peers. Chunking. Chunking is the process of combining pieces of information, grouping related items together so that someone can remember them more easily. So it's just like it sounds. We're putting stuff together, small pieces, chunking it together. So what is the purpose of chunking? The purpose of chunking is to maximize the capacity of someone's short-term memory. Because the capacity is between 4 or 7 plus or minus 2, chunking allows the individual to store more information in the short-term memory by assigning the information into groups. So we chunk it into groups. So here's an example of chunking. Would be putting a 7-digit phone number into 2 groups. So one of the first 3 digits, then the last 4. So let's say 555, then we got 3672. So they got to remember 555 and 3672. That's how we chunk it, and that's how we can remember those numbers. We also have the chunking reading strategy where we break down a difficult text into more manageable pieces and have the students rewrite these chunks in their own words. Achievement goals. There are 4 types of achievement goals: mastery goals, performance goals, performance approach goals, and performance avoidance goals. So a mastery goal is one's desire to achieve competence by acquiring additional knowledge or mastering a new skill. So here's an example. I want to become the best guitar piano player I could be. So this student would practice without an instructor or a parent even telling them to do so. When you focus on increasing your skill, you're less likely to quit when things get hard. So how mastery approach relates to studying strategies and tactics? Well, a learner who strives to master the task are not necessarily concerned about showing that they are competent. Their study strategies touch on events part of the task as they strive to master it. And a student with high mastery approach might be more willing to ask for help. Performance goals is a desire to present oneself as competent in the eyes of others. So example, performance goal would be setting the goal to win first place in the school spelling bee or to just make the basketball team. The student is showing others that, hey, I have the competency to win or make the team. The performance approach goal, that's when students focus on achieving high standards or outperforming others and receiving recognition for their accomplishments. So when students have performance approach goals, they do not necessarily care about mastering the task. Here's an example. Performance approach goals. That's learners who have a performance approach goal orientation are extrinsically motivated. So an example of a performance approach is, it is important for me to do better than other students on the math test so I can receive praise from my teacher. Remember, they're looking for that praise. So how performance approach relates to study strategic strategies and tactics. So learners who have performance approach goals are concerned about their performance or grade. They are intrinsically motivated. So learners with this goal orientation may select challenging tasks or problems. Performance avoidance goals. Students with performance avoidance goals are concerned with avoiding or failure in front of others. So they are intrinsically motivated by fear of poor performance. An example may be, my goal in this class is to avoid performing poorly on this test. So my classmates will not look at me strange, or my teacher may not look at me strange. So they don't want to embarrass themselves. They just want to perform enough. So they want to be in the spotlight. So how performance avoidance relate to studying strategies and tactics? So learners with performance avoidance goals may avoid asking for help because it demonstrates that they do not understand the material. They avoid placing themselves in challenging situations because they're still in fear of failure. And they may experience high levels of exam anxiety because they still don't want their peers to know, hey, I'm failing this test. Expectancy value theory is a theory of motivation that describes the relationship between a student's expectancy for success at a task or the achievement of a goal in relation to the value of the task. So there are 4 factors that determine the value one placed on task, and that is importance, utility, interest, and cost. And we'll be talking about those 4. So their importance. How important a person thinks is to do well on the test. How important do I think I'm going to do well on this test? You might think a task is the most important thing you do all day long or all year. You may think it's pesky tasks that you need to get done before lunchtime. So how much we value a task will influence how motivated we are to do it. So here's an example. Uh, let's say my mom liked going to church. So she's a dedicated Christian who will go to church every Sunday, even if it's a holiday. So it's important to her sense of self. So others in the family may be willing to skip church on occasion because it's something that's good to do, but it's not in their the core identity. So the utility value refers to how useful we find a task for our lives. Utility value might have to do with your future, and usually you pay more attention in class that seems relevant to your life or after school. So succeeding in a job or ensuring you're healthy or wealthy, that's utility value. An example. So does it serve a purpose? So learning Spanish will help me get a promotion at my work. That's serving a purpose. So I might learn Spanish just to get that promotion. So, but if my job doesn't need me to learn Spanish, so there's no need for me to learn it, I'm not going to practice that skill or learn that skill because it's not going to. I'm not going to need it in the future. The interest. Interest refers to how much we enjoy a task. So when we are intrinsically motivated, we'll do the task because it's something that we get pleasure, we like to do. Uh, it is the opposite of intrinsic motivation, which usually means that we're only doing the task if we're given a reward or some type of praise. So an interesting example. Uh, learning an instrument. So some people will practice and practice all day long because it feels good to play the instrument. It's something they like. It's something they're interested in. Others would avoid it and skip practice because they're a bit bored and bothered by the task. So they're not that interested in it. So they're not going to put forth that effort. And cost. Just like it sounds, counting the cost. What does the task cost us? What does the task cost me? Could I be doing something better with my time? Is it costing me money? Is it getting in the way of me having fun? So these are all a cost. A cost example, we thinking about what we are giving up to complete the task. Is it actually worth sacrificing? So I can watch the football game or I can study for my finals. If I watch the football game, I might not do well as I could have if I was studying. That's the cost. Gagne's 9 learning events. So Gagne suggested that 9 events of instruction. It can enhance student learning, it can gain attention, inform learners of objective, stimulate recall or prior learning, present stimulus, provide learning guidance, elicit performance, provide feedback, it assesses performance, and enhance retention and transfer. So we're going to be talking about 4 of the 9 learning events. And the first one is to gain attention. So we can present an introductory activity that it engages learners. Remember, this is coming pretty much following our lesson plan. So we're going to tap, let's say, example, tapping on a microphone, students that the lecture was about to begin. So the class then began with a presentation or media such as a comic strip or YouTube video that related to the lecture topic. So that's gaining their attention. Inform learners of the objectives. So we're going to give learner objectives for the class. So students will be presented with the objectives and how they are relevant to the overall course objectives. Then they're going to be followed by example of real world application of the knowledge to be gained. So they're going to see what they're going to be getting out of the class. Stimulate recall of prior learning. To do this, we're going to present an experience that stimulates the memory of prior learning. When you do that, they usually retain the information longer. So question and images were incorporated that reviewed related material and facilitated connection to a prerequisite of learning. So that's something that they already know. So we're just building on what they know. Provide learners guidance. So we're going to give the learners some examples. Students play word games, receive lecture recordings, use handouts, and review samples question as examples of expected learning. Self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is one individual's belief about their abilities to be successful. It can be low or high. Students may feel, I'm not ever going to be good at math because on a previous experience, I failed the first math test, so my mom was not good at math, my dad was not good at math, so I know I'm not going to be good at math. So they feel like they're the smartest person in the class because they make good grades and their efforts are rewarded. Self-efficacy does play a huge role in how motivated the learner is. Low self-efficacy, they're going to be less motivated to perform a task. So self-efficacy determines how one feels, thinks, motivates themselves, behaves, and performs. So students with high self-efficacy have a better self-regulation. They are more resilient. They demonstrate stronger academic performance and achievement, and they are more motivated in school. They set challenges for higher academic goals. It is important for teachers to know the self-efficacy of their students. So where are they coming from? Where they feel they are weak or need to improve in. Sometimes you cannot overcome this self-efficacy, but there are techniques and strategies such as study tips or organizational tips that will help your students. The 5 profiles of motivated self-regulated learners. Some students are going to be intrinsically motivated while others are going to be extrinsically motivated. So there are 5 profiles of motivated self-regulated learners. The strategic learner, you have the knowledge builders, the surface learner, and learn helplessness. Students and apathetic students. So most of these profiles fall into 2 categories. They're either adaptive, which is your strategic learner and your knowledge builders, or they are maladaptive. That's your surface learners, learn helplessness, and apathetic students. So students approach different subjects and assignments with different levels of motivation. So if a student feels they are strong in one subject and weak in another, they're going to be more motivated to perform in the subject area that they feel most comfortable with. Strategic learners. These are those learners who just want what they want to be good students. They want to get good grades. They want to master content, but they're motivated by the reward for their success. They tend to use encoding and retrieval learning strategies. So they start out with encoding and then they move towards the retrieval strategy. So they generally have a positive outlook on school. Knowledge builders, they want to master content and gain knowledge. They're not really motivated by grade or by what their teachers think. They do tend to use more deeper and retrieval learning strategies than encoding strategies. They are willing to dig deeper into the content in order to master it, and they don't always look like you're typically good students because they can sometimes be bored with traditional learning. Example of a knowledge builder is a teacher may not feel like a student is working to their full potential, but they demonstrate mastery and knowledge of the topic or the concept. So they may appear to have poor work ethic because they're not always willing to do exactly what the teacher wants. Surface learners are those who want to do good in school because they feel like they must. They may not be interested or have no desire to master the subject, and they tend to be more intrinsically motivated. Surface learning, these are your students who doesn't want to fail. They want to do or be good students. They're willing to put the work in to get the good grades, but they don't necessarily master and retain the content the way knowledge building does. Learn helplessness. Um, these are students who want to learn the content, but they just can't seem to get it. They try hard, but they end up struggling. They sometimes look like strategic learners because they're motivated, but they don't tend to experience success. Uh, if they don't get the information, they tend to give up. So these students need both intrinsic and extrinsic motivation to keep them trying. So these are your struggling students. And this is the conclusion of our presentation. Uh, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate. Here's my email address. And thank you for listening. Thank you for your time. Here are my resources.